COVID-19 crisis. He was accused of failing to fight the disaster in a case opened by the Court of Justice of the Republic, and that's the only court that can judge government members over their actions whilst they're in office. Why is it being laid at his door?
This is very procedural. I mean, there have been some complaints lodged, particularly by families of victims or health personnel who have felt that they were not protected enough at the beginning of the pandemic. And so the court had no other option than opening a case. So I don't think this is really related to the exit of Edouard Philippe. There's a number of cases here at the moment where there are two commissions of inquiry by Parliament. There's a government inquiry itself. Everybody wants to know what went wrong, what lessons can we draw, and whether indeed there are responsibilities in some of the failures, the initial failures in the lack of masks, of respiratory equipment, and so on. But I don't think Edouard Philippe really has much to fear in these cases.
And on the case of coronavirus, what does Jean Castex have on his hands? I mean, how is the virus being dealt with right now in France?
Well, Jean Castex was actually in charge of getting out of the lockdown, and this has been considered a very successful operation. And at the moment, I must say, looking at news elsewhere in the world, we are pretty safe in France, and people have started living again as before. The restaurants are packed, people are going on holidays, and it's a bit amazing because too many people probably feel that it's over when it's not really over. We have to be careful.
Absolutely. You're just hearing that from California earlier in the programme. Pierre Heskey, thank you for joining us, a French journalist, with an update. And of course, the Louvre has opened today as well.
And a reminder of the top stories this morning. The British government is promising $2 billion to help the arts and culture sector survive the pandemic. So some galleries and museums are going to open here in the UK as well. But the top story this morning is the border between Australia's two most populous states, Victoria and New South Wales, is being closed to help contain a spike in coronaviruses in the capital of Victoria.
Let's get all the sports news now. Not going well for Man City, Matthew.
It really isn't, Claire, is it? They've lost their title and they're once again 23 points behind the champions Liverpool, and Manchester City manager Pep Guardiola says he's struggling to understand why his team have lost 9 Premier League games this season. They lost 1-0 at Southampton on Sunday. That's a third straight away league defeat. Liverpool brushed off the big defeat that City gave them the other day to re-establish that 23-point lead with a 2-0 win over relegation-threatened Aston Villa. Elsewhere, Gambian duo of Moussa Jawara and Moussa Barrow turned it round for Bologna in Italy with late goals to win against Inter Milan. Inter still third, but only by a point from Atalanta. It's 10 wins in a row for Atalanta now. Behind those two, Napoli beat Roma to go above Milan into the last European spot in the league. And in Spain, Barcelona still just about in the hunt to retain their title. Real Madrid have a 4-point lead with 4 games to go. After both teams won on Sunday, Real beat Athletic Bilbao by 1-0, and Barcelona had a morale-boosting 4-1 win over Villarreal. And the Catalonia-based Sport newspaper's front page this morning reads, "There is life." And I think they possibly mean more than life just in the league. Has the mood changed at Camp Nou? Let's get the latest from Ernest Macier from Radio Catalonia. Good morning, Ernest. Things have been really grim for Barca in recent weeks, particularly off the field. Talk about Messi leaving, talk about Griezmann being unhappy and so on. 4-1 win doesn't change all that, does it?
Yeah, probably. The problem is that maybe this reaction comes too late, because Barcelona, yes, yesterday played one of the best games of the season, but when you are not winning, then these kind of problems appear. And problems about Messi, about the adaptation of Griezmann, who, by the way, yesterday he played quite well. So yesterday, yes, it's a healing victory, but the problem is that with 4 remaining games, Madrid has to lose 1 game and, possibly lose 2 games. So it's a bit difficult because the calendar is better in the case of Madrid.
Okay. So regardless of what happens with the league for the rest of this season, can you now see, after seeing Griezmann, Suarez and Messi all working really well together last night, can the Barcelona fans see something that can be built on for next season and beyond, or are we still looking at big changes, however they come?
Yeah, I think there are to be big changes because this team, yes, retains a lot of quality, but the thing is that some people are growing older. So yesterday they played really well, but nobody can assure you that they will play regularly well like in the past for the next months, especially when you find defensive teams. Because yesterday Villarreal was playing offensive, was a very good team and offered a lot of spaces ahead for Barcelona to play their style. But I don't see Barcelona playing this way all the season. I think, for example, against Espanyol, maybe yes, but if they play away in, for example, Alaves or Eibar stadiums, things can be different because they are smaller pitches and with a surface which is not that good for Barcelona's style of playing. So I don't think Barcelona is a fresh team because the players are not as young as they were. The best years have passed, and yes, they can play like yesterday, but in 24 hours things can change suddenly. The team needs still adaptation because the coach is new. So I don't think it's reliable what we saw yesterday, because I don't know what's due to the quality of the players and what's due to the schema that Villarreal offered.
Okay, yeah. So just one final point then. It's a really complicated situation at Barcelona because there have been huge tensions between Lionel Messi and the people who run the club, and so on. None of that has been sorted out, has it? Just by 1-4-1 win. That's going to carry on. Is there a resolution coming for it?
Not yet. There will be elections in Barcelona next year, and I think Leo Messi is using his popularity as a strategy to try to win more money for the last contract. So I don't think it's going to be resolved in the next few weeks, but I think he will stay because he has said many times that he's very comfortable in Barcelona and that he wants to retire here.
Excellent stuff. Good news for Barcelona fans. Ernest, thanks so much indeed. Ernest Massieu from Radio Catalunya. One other line for you. It was a Mercedes which won the Austrian Grand Prix, but not Lewis Hamilton's. He came fourth after a penalty. The race was instead won by his teammate Valtteri Bottas.
Thank you very much.
We're going to go to Austria now and hear a story that fits into a bit of a pattern of Chechen exiles dying in exile and not from homesickness. Last year we were reporting on a man shot in Berlin. Earlier this year 2 more were killed. Now another dissident from Chechnya has been killed in Austria, but this time 2 Russians have been arrested. The victim was one of thousands of asylum seekers who left the volatile republic in the Caucasus on the very southern border of Russia. Nick Sturdy is a documentary maker who recently investigated death threats and assassinations of Chechen in Europe for the BBC's Assignment programme. And he joins us now. Nick, thanks for coming on the show. First off, what do we know about the man who was killed?
So we know that he was known as Anzor, which seems to be his his YouTube name, because he was a Chechen asylum seeker who was granted Austrian citizenship back in 2005. And his real name is Mamikhan Umarov, who was a police officer in the brief time when Chechnya was independent from Russia at the end of the 1990s. He fled to Austria after the Second Chechen War was over, in which Moscow effectively regained control of Chechnya, and he seems to have been granted asylum in Austria, and he seems to have been working for several years, giving information to the Austrian police and the Austrian authorities, and also the Ukrainian authorities about plots. He said plots to murder different Chechens and indeed Ukrainians as well. Some of those plots having been realised, and the victims ending up some of those who have been killed in recent years in Europe and elsewhere.
Would he be described, therefore, as a critic of the regime? I mean, this man, it's fair to say he's a dissident, yeah?
I think dissident and critic, I think, are probably very mildly described. He's definitely a critic. He fought against the regime in Chechnya. Members of his family were killed. And from April onwards this year, he started releasing a series of clips on YouTube in which he criticised the regime, but also was extremely provocative about the regime's leader, Ramzan Kadyrov, about his mother, who's kind of a taboo subject, and also he produced all these stories about senior officials being involved in assassination. In reality, as you mentioned, that there have been many Chechens who have been murdered abroad as well as in Chechnya itself in recent years.
A bit of a pattern, I suppose. Now, he was, as I understand, offered police protection, but he turned it down. Do Chechens abroad expect to be safe? Or is this something, I mean, from your work, always looking over their shoulder seems to be the impression?
I think always looking over their shoulder, for sure. The Chechens who come to Europe are typically fleeing two very brutal wars, a regime which is extremely brutal, which is mired in human rights abuses, abductions, torture, disappearances, and so on. And I think that many people come to Europe with the hope that finally they will have some kind of security. But the shadow of Chechnya is always on them, whether it's through pressure on them because of their relatives who are still at home, whether it's representatives of the Chechen regime that are based in European countries who exercise pressure and sometimes who seem to be involved in violence against them as well.
I remember after the killing in Germany, in Berlin, there was quite a lot of reports from Berlin of kind of the awkwardness of the government taking this on. They I think, expelled two people without actually saying that they were responsible for it. In this case, we have 2 arrests. Is that potentially significant? What a shame. We've lost the line, but we got a very good picture of the background to that story. If you want to know more of Nick's investigation, Nick Sturdy, if you go to it's one of the BBC assignment series, the Chechen blogger on the run, which is the story that he was saying. He was talking particularly there about a man, in fact, he's been named in several ways. You heard one of his names. He has a series of aliases as well that Nick was alluding to there. One of the Chechen dissidents, if we can call them that, to die at the hands of unknown killers, although, as I was mentioning there, the Austrian police say that they have arrested 2 people.
You're listening to the All News Channel from KCRW. Stream us on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, or on the KCRW mobile app.
Listen to KCRW music around the clock on Eclectic 24. The all-music streaming service features new, classic, and exclusive tracks 24 hours a day on demand. Go to kcrw.com/eclectic